This video will give you a bit more insight in the error settings in HyTune for TA slider. But let's talk about the possible errors first before we look at the settings in HyTune. The TA slider is keeping track on different errors. Error 1 is low power. This means the supply voltage is less than 85% of the design voltage. So normally for 24 volt supply this is 19 volts. You will see that this is marked with an extra number, here X. This is a number of seconds from putting the device on the power supply. Error 2 is the line break detection error. This means the signal is below 1 volt when 2 to 10 volt is set. Error 3 is valve clogging, means the TA slider cannot reach the desired position. 4 is the stroke detection failure. This error occurs when the calibration was not successful, like when the detected stroke is significantly higher than the maximum stroke. Output line break shows that there is something wrong with the output line cable. Error 6 is input out of range. This happens when the input signal is, for example, 12 volt instead of the maximum 10 volt. Degraded operation is a bit more complicated. This is something that happens when the actuator couldn't reach the requested position. So in this case it will try to resolve this by fully opening the valve to flush the valve, and then afterwards, if it still can't reach the position, it will take the new restricted range into account and then using this or showing this degraded operation error. There are a few more errors possible because you see there are some between 6 and 12. These are more for internal use or specific settings. So let's look at the possible settings now in HyTune. I will open my HyTune and then make an offline configuration or start an offline configuration to show you the settings on errors. So we go to the main screen here. You see I'm connected to a TA slider 160, but we could change this if needed. And then general, and then we can click on error settings. You see here all the possible errors, all related to the errors that I've spoken you about in the beginning of this video. So here when we go back on the top of the screen and look at the first one, we have first of all we have an optional waiting position. So this waiting position is when an error occurs. Then we could set that the actuator should go to the fully extended position or the fully retracted position. This of course will depend on the application. Then first of all, when error 1 is occurring, this means a low power supply. And then we know that the actuator can't move anymore, but it will flash the violet pulse. Then error 2 is when input line break happens. We could set go to waiting position, so extended or retracted. Same for the valve clogging error I have spoken you about. First of all, we can ask to perform some unblocking attempts, and then after several attempts it will go to a fully open valve in this case. As the valve is clogged, we can't shut it, of course. And then we have the stroke detection failure. Also there we can go to the waiting position if needed, if the installer wants it like this. And then finally we have the input out of range. Then we will ask to go to the waiting position also or not if needed, depending on the installation, depending on the specific application. We can also have a look at the other settings, and then I will speak about subsampling etc. in another video, but here you see that we can add some delays. Could be useful when the power supply needs to be stabilized to not have an error on the supply voltage.